I haven't looked at the Wildwood Ranger models since a long time ago, let's say, and definitely hadn't even looked at them since the Elf update, but man, they're looking good these days. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the style, but you can at least appreciate the quality of the work. Today's replay, courtesy of Stormrunner, we're going to be talking about Wildwood Rangers, but let's get started on the fun, as there's a massive Vanguard situation here. Dwarfs versus Wood Elves. An interesting matchup, can kind of degenerate sometimes, but let's not talk about that. We've got Dryads running in, taking some charges to the face, front line of Miners with blasting charges, Warlers, Goblobber, Cannons, some Dwarf Warriors, Dragonback Slayers in the back, Gotrek, and a Rune Lord. Dryka going to be leading the way. Got Wardens of Kithral, the Regiment Renown, Wildwood Rangers, who actually are a weapon variant, the rare weapon variant, ROR. They have shields and spears instead of the two-handed weapons. Gives them much better melee defense than regular Wildwood Rangers. They also come with Armor Sundering, lower overall weapon strength, but of course they gain a bonus versus large of 15. The shield also, Silver Shield, 55% missile block chance, very nice, but Wildwood Rangers by themselves are in an interesting place. I haven't really tried them too much since the changes to infantry bracing, but in theory they can actually fight some targets better, like many other great weapon units we've seen recently, you know, White Lions, Chaos Warriors with great weapons, various, even Chaos Marauders with great weapons. We've seen a bit of a resurgence in recent patches because they're able to stand up and fight monsters a bit better. Here against the Dwarfs, they are very, very squishy. We've also got a couple of Hawk Riders here in the back, a couple of great Stag Knights who themselves had a little bit of a tweak. Their animations, people were saying their animations were broken before. It's actually the fact that the hitboxes were a little bit too large. They also had their missile block chance nerfed a little bit, but anyway, as the Stag Knights charge into the back line, you can see what Stormrunner is doing here is just applying as much pressure to these ranged tools as possible. These Wildwood Rangers already taken a couple catapult volleys there. Really, they're very squishy for their cost. Low armor and low melee defense for like 900 points. They have great AP values. Of course, Woodsmen, they do have immune to psychology baseline, which is something that can't be said of a lot of elite high elf infantry, or basically all high elf infantry. If they're in the forest, they also get a plus bonus versus large and charge defense, in addition to the other typical wood elf forest benefits. But their squishiness is really what makes them so rare to see. But if used correctly, they can do absolutely hilarious damage. And here, they mostly managed to get into the fight unscathed. You can see the Stag Knights pressuring the backline, taking a Rune of Master Rune of Wrath and Rune to the face, getting chased by Slayers, but that means, yeah, these units at the very least disrupted. Quarrelers distracted, shooting at these Hawk Riders. Over here, the Stag Knights are able to come in and collapse this flank very aggressively. You can see the Dwarfs just getting punted around by these giant, angry Stags. I have to say, the Stag Knight's probably one of my favorite units for the Wood Elves, but the real tale of the tape here is about these Wildwood Rangers getting point-blank blasted by the Goblobber there. A few of them do get into contact with the cannon crew there, looks like. More coming over on this side and just absolutely cleaning house on a lot of this Dwarf value, mixed in with the Dryads a little bit here for some extra tankiness. It's interesting that the Dryads, I mean, they have 60 armor and some physical resistance, right? 25 melee defense, so lower melee defense definitely, but considering how much cheaper they are than Wildwood Rangers, you do see kind of the downside. But right now, like, Wildwood Rangers here, 49 kills, 27 kills so far. Dwarfs are holding for the time being, but a lot of their ranged tools have been shut down. Hawk Riders coming for a quick hit and run to shut down that artillery, make sure they stay offline. Stag Knights operating out in the periphery, making sure these routing units will not come back. That leaves the Wildwood Rangers here in the center to just do their work, just clean house. And Dwarfs, definitely I would say the best matchup for these guys, and that's, again, if you can get them into combat without getting absolutely blasted by something like a flame cannon, organ gun, even like the regular cannon and the Goblobber that was brought here are pretty good against these guys. But in this situation, Stormrunner does a great job disrupting the missile tools of the Dwarfs. Malevolent Dryad summon being pulled up in the back line. Only get one of those now. They're going to go after the Dragonback Slayers, which is a nice play. Yeah, great Stag Knights getting a nice rear charge here. Dryka's taken quite a bit of damage from Gotrek, and this is one of the things that's keeping the balance about relatively close. I know it is kind of swinging for the Wood Elves at this point. Dryka, though, of course, as she takes damage, will buff all units around her, and we can see she is currently at Tier 3 of that Fanatical Resolve, although it does look like she's going to get routed there. That'll keep balance of power. So, of course, as soon as I say that, it's going to shift quite dramatically. And the Rune Lord up on his anvil, pretty expensive. That is going to give magic resistance map-wide to all units. which is pretty good against Wood Elves. Wood Elves generally have a lot of units that do magic damage, like these Dryads, for example. So most Dwarf units, if we look here, even these Routing Miners, 40% magic resistance. They're going to take minimal damage from the Dryads. But the Wildwood Rangers are here to deliver the DPS. Nice open field charge there into these Dwarf Warriors. Get some of these sweet animations. Their weapons and animations are probably some of the coolest of any elf unit, I have to say. These like giant glaive things. Very, very cool. Gonna come in and clean up this artillery crew as well, and at this point, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. This Rune Lord, will continue to hold out for quite some time here. Stag Knights, again, just cleaning up units out in the periphery. Expensive unit to be chasing routing units, but their armor piercing means that against the Dwarfs, doesn't take much. Just one quick charge on a tattered unit like this, and there's no way they're coming back. Umbral Pendulum going off over there. Rika just calling it in. Yeah, probably doing a little bit of friendly damage, potentially, but that's okay. Just trying to knock Gotrek off his feet. Or maybe it was over here on these Slayers. Dragonback Slayers trying to chase Rika off. She gets the support of the Hawk Riders and the Dryads, though, finishing off the Dragonback Slayers, and now just Gotrek and the Rune Lord. Handful of Grumbling Guard over here. More Miners shattering. Very quickly looking like army losses for the Dwarfs. We'll fast forward through that eventuality. Gotrek gonna get slammed by Eagles. The Rune Lord shatters, and that's game. So, nice one from Stormrunner. Fun to see the Wood Elves rush pay off against the Dwarfs. I do see more players going that route these days, and it seems like the new tools certainly help, especially Stag Knights. And now that their kind of hitboxes are fixed, they all can get in combat at the same time. They operate a little bit better here. They didn't actually get all that much damage value, but their impact on the battle was pretty decisive in terms of disrupting that backline. Same thing with these Hawk Riders, although they definitely do both pay for themselves. Yeah, Wardens of Kithral, awesome value, 1462, 1612 for these other Wildwood Rangers, and 1463. So really, the majority of the damage output came from the Wildwood Rangers here. Just in terms of like the total army damage output. Dryads really don't do much because of the magic resistance. Same thing with Dryga. Even her Dryad summon is more just to kind of tie things down in this situation. But to Debry's credit here, good hanging in the pocket and doing his thing. The Binders with Blasting Charges and the Dwarf Warriors all trade reasonably cost effectively at the end of the day. It's really these range units where he loses out on a lot of value, and even then they do all right considering the cost. I mean, the Portlers at least. The artillery definitely not what you want to see from those units. But yeah, let's just quickly kind of finish up with a little bit of a comparison and discussion about Wildwood Rangers. I do think that they're a unit that potentially you may see more often, and besides Dwarfs, I have faced off against them as Warriors of Chaos. Even before the bracing changes, they could occasionally be good there if they caught you off guard. Like sometimes they just might not prepare. I mean, granted, they are just low armor infantry, which you should be preparing for if you're facing Wood Elves, because that's all of their infantry, right? But against Dwarfs, Warriors of Chaos, those are two factions where you can reliably expect some heavy armor stuff, and I might even potentially try them against, like, I don't know, factions that don't have too much range but might potentially bring some armor. So yeah, that basically just fits into Warriors of Chaos. Dwarfs will bring a lot of range, but they still just, the armor thing makes the Wildwood Rangers pretty good. They're in a different place now because you have these 1200 Blade Singers kind of sitting above them, 800 War Dancers sitting right below them. But those aren't really the best comparisons. I mean, Blade Singers, even less armor, slightly better melee defense, and, anti-infantry as well. 30 charge, they've got physical resistance, so slightly different. And they also don't, have the anti-large effect in the woods, so there's some differences there. But in terms of other kind of, like, mid to high tier great weapon infantry, you've got, like, Empire Great Swords are maybe not the best because they're not actually great weapons, they're great swords, which are slightly different. But the two that kind of spring to my mind, slightly less, but not much in terms of cost, are Chaos Warriors with great weapons, and of course, High Elven White Lions. We'll start with White Lions since they're also elves. The Wildwood Rangers, interestingly enough, even though they have the same model count, has significantly more HP. 675 more HP is pretty good, although that 50 less armor definitely does come into play. The Wildwood Rangers basically better in every other way, even with martial prowess factored in. I mean, the White Lions get more melee defense at the end of the day, but significantly less melee attack. So the Wildwood Rangers definitely can deal some damage. They are absolutely glass cannons. Slightly less weapon strength on the White Lions as well. Yeah, just the comparison looks very favorable for the Wildwood Rangers. At only 100 points more, do give you a lot of upside. Of course, the lack of armor is an issue. These guys taking a charge in the face from even like mid to low tier shock cavalry will take significant damage, so there's that to consider. Whereas, I mean, White Lions will still take significant damage, but less so, certainly. Yeah. It's an interesting one. And then you kind of consider Chaos Warriors with Great Weapons as an aside here, or for both. Chaos Warriors with Great Weapons, yeah, significantly worse melee attack, only slightly worse melee defense. Of course, 100 armor, which is just way more, and still more HP, again, over Wildwood Rangers. So Chaos Warriors with Great Weapons definitely a lot more tanky. They're going to be able to stand and fight a lot better in those battles. With monsters and so on. And Wildwood Rangers, the thing I don't know, and I need to kind of delve into the files and look, is their mass value. Both their kind of number and their weight class. There's two separate things. There's the mass value in terms of real number, and there's the weight class. I think all elves are considered lightweight class, and correct me if I'm wrong on that. Maybe some of the heavy armor high elf infantry is not, but for the most part I believe they are. And in terms of actual mass number, I don't believe they are very high. So maybe, I don't know. I should do some testing, honestly, see how they compare to, like, say, White Lions in a cavalry fight or fighting a monster or something, and just see, does the potential mass difference make much of a difference? Anyway, some food for thought. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button every time I upload a new video. You'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.